If an avoidant hurt you, went cold, then popped back in like nothing happened, this video is for you. That casual reset can mess with your mind, make you doubt your feelings, and keep you stuck in a cycle you didn't create. In the next few minutes, you'll learn why they do it, what it really means about their defense system, and how to respond without begging, exploding, or abandoning yourself. Stay with me, because one boundary and one sentence can change the entire dynamic. When an avoidant hurts you and then acts like nothing happened, it is not proof that you are unlovable. It is not proof that you are too sensitive. It is not proof that your heart is asking for something unreasonable. It is usually proof of a defense system that protects closeness by minimizing the impact of closeness. And if you don't understand that, you will keep turning their shutdown into a judgment on your worth. This pattern can feel brutal because the hurt is real, but the acknowledgement is missing. You experience a rupture, a cold withdrawal, a dismissive comment, a broken promise, a sudden silence that lands like a bruise you can't explain to anyone else. You sit with the ache, you wonder what you did wrong. You search for the words that will finally make them understand. Then they return with a casual tone, a light message, a small joke. How was your day? As if your pain should evaporate simply because they have decided to move forward without processing it. So you start replaying everything. You start editing your feelings. You start shrinking your needs so the relationship can return to comfort. You tell yourself to be patient, to stop making a big deal, to accept the reset because you don't want to lose them. And slowly, you begin to abandon yourself to keep the peace. That is the danger. The most damaging part is not only that they avoid repair. It is that you begin to believe your pain is a problem you must manage alone. Here is what often lies underneath this response. Accountability can activate shame. A conversation about harm can feel like getting trapped in emotional intensity. Repair can feel like losing control. So they default to normal. They skip the messy middle, where two adults name what happened and rebuild trust. They jump straight to the surface level of connection because it feels safer than facing the impact of their behavior. But your heart does not heal on a reset. Your heart heals on repair. You are allowed to understand their psychology without making it your burden to soften the consequences. You are allowed to have compassion for their history without giving endless permission for repeated harm. The impact matters. The pattern matters. The repetition matters. And your nervous system keeps score even when your mind tries to be generous. If you keep accepting the nothing happened energy, you are teaching a silent lesson. You are teaching that your pain can be outlasted. You are teaching that accountability is optional. You are teaching that your standard for love can be lowered if the other person is uncomfortable. You don't mean to teach that. You are just tired. You are just hopeful. You are just relieved when tension fades, even if the wound remains. This is where you must stop your empathy as a weapon against yourself. Empathy is not self-erasure. Understanding someone's defenses doesn't mean you should volunteer to be injured by them. The fact that you want clarity, closure, and care after a rupture is not weakness. It is emotional health. The wrong person will call that too much because it requires them to grow. The right person will honor it because they want to protect what you share. When you name this pattern as a defense system, you reclaim your power. You stop interpreting their emotional amnesia as proof that you didn't matter. You stop treating their calmness after harm as evidence that you should rush to be okay. You begin to see the difference between someone who is genuinely regulated and someone who is avoiding intimacy when it gets uncomfortable. You can say, calmly, I'm not willing to pretend this didn't affect me. I'm not willing to return to normal without understanding what broke. I care about this connection, and that is why repair matters. You don't have to chase them into empathy. You set a boundary that respects your heart. A boundary is not punishment. It is information. It is the truth about what you will and will not participate in. It is a line that says, love is not just how we feel when things are easy. Love is also how we respond when someone we care about gets hurt. This keynote is not about labeling all avoidants as villains. Some people with avoidant patterns are deeply caring. Some are learning. But caring is not the same as being safe. A relationship cannot thrive on chemistry alone. It needs responsibility, repair, and consistent emotional presence. Because repair is where trust is built. Repair is where intimacy becomes real instead of performative. Without repair, you stay trapped in cycles of hurt and reset until your self-trust begins to erode. You deserve a partner who can hear you without turning your feelings into a threat. You deserve someone who can say, I see what I did, I understand how it landed, and I'm willing to change the way I show up. That is basic emotional adulthood. So when they act like nothing happened, remind yourself, this is not a measure of my value. This is a reflection of their coping style, and I can love someone and still require accountability. I can care and still protect my peace. I can be soft and still be firm. Your pain is real, even if they minimize it, even if they avoid it, even if they walk back into your life with a casual smile, like the emotional earthquake never happened. I need you to stop doubting your own heart just because another person is skilled at pretending everything is fine. Because this pattern can quietly destroy your self-trust, not in one dramatic moment, but in a slow, exhausting drip. When someone hurts you and then tries to reset the relationship without repair, it creates a specific kind of emotional confusion. You start asking yourself, was it really that bad? Am I exaggerating? Should I just let it go? And because you still care, because you still want the relationship to survive, you might even convince yourself that your pain is something you should swallow for the sake of peace. But peace that requires you to erase your feelings is not peace. It is self-abandonment. You felt the shift. You felt the coldness. You felt the withdrawal. You felt the moment your needs became an inconvenience and your emotions became something they wanted to sidestep. Your body registered it before your mind even formed the words. That tightness in your chest, the restless sleep, the overthinking, the way you kept replaying the moment to understand what you did wrong, that was your nervous system telling you that something important was broken. And here's the trap. When they act like nothing happened, your empathy can start working against you. You might think, maybe they're stressed. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe they just don't know how to talk about feelings. That may even be true. But their limitations do not cancel your reality. Their avoidance does not make your hurt imaginary. Their comfort with skipping repair does not mean repair isn't necessary. Your pain is real because impact is real. You don't need a courtroom-level explanation to justify why you feel wounded. You don't need permission to acknowledge that something hurt you. Love doesn't require you to be emotionally silent to be acceptable. In a healthy connection, your feelings are not an attack. They are information. They are a signal that the relationship needs care, reflection, and growth. When someone tries to move forward without repair, they are asking you to participate in emotional amnesia. They are asking you to pretend your heart didn't get bruised so they can stay comfortable. They are asking you to trade your emotional truth for short-term calm. And if you repeatedly agree to that exchange, you teach yourself a dangerously quiet lesson that your feelings are negotiable, that your boundaries are flexible, that your pain can be postponed indefinitely. This is how people lose themselves, not because they don't love, but because they love while shrinking. You might also be dealing with the internal guilt that shows up when you try to bring it up. You may have been told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, but needing repair is not intensity, it is maturity. Wanting accountability is not drama, it is safety. Asking someone to acknowledge harm is not a demand for perfection, it is a request for basic human care. And the reason this dynamic hurts so deeply is because the reset can feel like a seduction. The moment they warm up again, the moment they act normal, your heart wants to rush toward relief. You want to believe this is the start of change. You want to believe it was a misunderstanding. You want to believe the connection is safe again. But your body remembers what your mind wants to forget. So let your body be part of your truth. If the thought of going back to normal makes you anxious, that is data. If you feel smaller when you try to express your feelings, that is data. If you find yourself rehearsing your words to avoid triggering their shutdown, that is data. You are not imagining the imbalance. You are adapting to it. Your pain is real, and it deserves respect. This doesn't mean you have to attack them. It doesn't mean you have to punish them. It means you stop participating in the false narrative that everything is okay just because they want it to be okay. You can say calmly, I'm not ready to move on without talking about what happened. I care about us, but I care about emotional safety too. I'm not asking for a perfect response. I'm asking for an honest one. If they are capable of growth, this is where they will lean in. They might be uncomfortable. They might need time, but they will try. They will recognize that repair is part of love. They will recognize that your feelings are not a threat to the relationship. They are a pathway to deeper trust. If they are not capable of growth, they will try to make you feel guilty for having feelings. They will rush you. They will dismiss you. They will label your pain as unnecessary. They will want the benefits of closeness without the responsibility of care. And that is not a reflection of your worth. That is a reflection of their emotional ceiling. You get to choose what you do with that truth. You can love someone and still refuse a cycle that makes you doubt your own reality. You can be compassionate and still be boundaried. You can understand why someone avoids discomfort without volunteering to carry all of it for them. And if you need a simple anchor to hold on to when doubt hits, let it be this. The fact that they can move on quickly does not mean you should. The fact that they can act casual does not mean the wound wasn't real. The fact that they want to reset does not mean you owe them access to your heart without accountability. Your pain is real, your needs are valid, and you are allowed to require the kind of love that does not ask you to pretend you were never hurt. You are not too sensitive for needing closure, consistency, and emotional safety. You are emotionally healthy, and anyone who has made you feel guilty for that has trained you to doubt your own nervous system. Because when you've been hurt by someone and they act like nothing happened, the most painful part is not only what they did, it's the way they try to erase the impact. And when you're a loving person, when you're a loyal person, when you still see the good in them, you can start wondering if you're the one making it bigger than it is. But let's slow this down, because your emotional reaction is not random. It is information. The ache you feel after dismissal, the confusion you feel after a reset, the heaviness in your chest when someone tries to move forward without repair, that is not you being dramatic. That is your system telling you that trust was damaged. That is your inner self saying, I cannot feel safe if harm is treated like it doesn't matter. A healthy nervous system is not one that never gets triggered. A healthy nervous system is one that recognizes when something is off and asks for repair. You are not asking for a perfect partner. You are asking for a present partner, someone who can say, I see you. I hear you. I understand that what I did landed badly. I care enough to talk about it. I care enough to change the pattern. That is not a luxury. That is the foundation of emotional intimacy. But in an avoidant dynamic, this request can be twisted into something else. Your need for acknowledgement might be labeled as pressure. Your desire for conversation might be labeled as arguing. Your request for reassurance might be labeled as neediness. And if you've heard those labels long enough, you might start shrinking your needs before you even speak them. You may lower your voice, soften your words, shorten your request, and still feel like you're asking for too much. You're not. Because the truth is, needing repair after hurt is the most normal thing in the world. It is what secure people do. It is what emotionally mature people do. They don't skip the aftermath. They don't pretend your heart is supposed to recover instantly because they feel uncomfortable facing what they caused. They don't require you to swallow pain to keep the connection smooth. Let's be honest about what you've likely been doing. You've been trying to make the relationship easier for them than it is for you. You've been carrying emotional discomfort so they can avoid theirs. You've been managing your disappointment quietly, hoping that your patience will eventually be rewarded with consistency. And this is why you feel exhausted. Because you have been living in a relationship where your feelings must be convenient to be allowed. That is not emotional safety. And when your inner voice says, I need to talk about this, and their energy says, why are you still on this? The real injury is the message underneath. Your pain is a problem for me. Your emotions are an interruption. Your need for accountability is inconvenient. Anyone would feel destabilized under that message. Anyone would start second guessing themselves. Your sensitivity is not the problem. Your sensitivity is your strength. It's the part of you that loves deeply. It's the part of you that values truth more than performance. It's the part of you that wants real intimacy, not a surface-level peace that hides the rot underneath. And that part of you deserves to be protected, not punished. So the question becomes, what do you do with this truth? You stop apologizing for wanting emotional adulthood. You stop treating your needs like a compromise you must negotiate down before they're acceptable. You remind yourself that your standards are not high because you are demanding. Your standards are high because you are done bleeding in silence. You can be calm and direct. You can say, I'm not okay pretending this didn't affect me. I don't want to fight, and I do want to repair. I care about us, and I also care about emotional safety. That is not an ultimatum. That is a boundary rooted in love for yourself. And here's what matters next. How they respond to your healthy need will tell you everything about the emotional reality of the relationship. If they lean in, even awkwardly, even slowly, if they attempt accountability, if they try to understand your experience, that is growth. If they shame you, dismiss you, punish you with distance, or try to make you feel guilty for having feelings, that is a pattern. A pattern you cannot keep sacrificing yourself to survive. This keynote is about reclaiming your right to feel, your right to name harm, your right to require repair, because your heart is not a side issue. Your emotional experience is not a minor inconvenience. It is the center of what makes love real. You do not have to become colder to be respected. You do not have to become silent to be lovable. You do not have to pretend you are not hurt to keep someone close. You are allowed to be a person who loves with warmth and expects accountability with clarity. And if someone tells you that your need for closure is too much, remember what that really means. It doesn't mean your need is wrong. It means your need requires a level of emotional presence they may not be ready to give. That is not your shame to carry. You deserve a relationship where your feelings are met, not managed. Where your pain is acknowledged, not avoided. Where your sensitivity is cherished, not treated like a problem to fix. Where the person who loves you does not rush past the wound just to get back to comfort. Because the deepest safety you will ever feel is not with someone who never makes mistakes. It is with someone who is brave enough to repair them. Compassion for their wounds must never become permission for repeated harm. And if you've been loving an avoidant who hurts you and then acts like nothing happened, this is the line that can save your self-respect. Because you are probably a deeply empathetic person. You don't just see behavior, you see history. You don't just see withdrawal, you see fear. You don't just see coldness, you see a nervous system that learned long ago that closeness equals danger. And that ability to understand people is beautiful. But in the wrong dynamic, it becomes the exact reason you stay longer than your heart can afford. You start making excuses that sound like love, but feel like self-erasure. You tell yourself they're not trying to be mean. They just shut down. They just don't know how to talk about feelings. They just had a hard past. They just need more time. And with every you shrink your own experience. You reduce your pain into something you should be able to carry quietly. You turn your boundaries into flexible suggestions. You treat your emotional safety like a negotiable item instead of a basic requirement. And here is the truth you might not want to face yet. Understanding why someone behaves a certain way does not mean you must accept the impact of that behavior on your life. The reason behind the wound is not a free pass to keep wounding you. You can hold compassion in one hand and standards in the other. You can acknowledge their fear and still say, I will not be the person who pays the price for it repeatedly. Because repeated harm does something that single mistakes don't. Repeated harm reshapes your identity. It rewires your nervous system to expect inconsistency. It trains you to anticipate disappointment before you even ask for love. It makes you cautious about your own needs. It makes you question your reality when they act like nothing happened. And the quiet tragedy is that you can become so focused on protecting their discomfort that you forget to protect your own heart. You may even start viewing your patience as proof of love. You think being understanding is the highest virtue. You think if you can just be calm enough, soft enough, loyal enough, they'll finally feel safe. They'll finally stay. They'll finally become the partner you know they could be. But love is not measured by how much pain you can tolerate without leaving. Love is measured by the consistency of care, the willingness to repair, the ability to show up emotionally when it's uncomfortable. Compassion without boundaries becomes a cage, and the hardest part is that you might be addicted to the hope of their potential. You remember their sweet moments. You remember the rare breakthroughs. You remember the version of them that shows up just enough to keep you believing. And that just enough becomes dangerous because it turns your standards into a moving target. You start accepting low effort because you've seen flashes of high effort. You start accepting emotional absence because you've felt emotional intensity in small bursts. Your heart begins to live on contrast instead of consistency. So this is where you draw the new line, without rage, without cruelty, without turning into someone you're not. You say, I can care about your past and still require respect in the present. I can understand your coping style and still refuse to be dismissed. I can love you and still need accountability when I'm hurt. That is not harsh. That is healthy. Because if they hurt you and act like nothing happened, and you always let the relationship reset, you are giving them a system where growth is optional. You are teaching them that your pain is something they can wait out. You are teaching them that your boundaries soften with time. And you are teaching yourself that peace is something you earn by staying quiet. That is not the kind of love that builds a stable future. Real compassion doesn't mean you excuse harm. Real compassion means you care enough about the relationship to demand the pattern changes. It means you are brave enough to tell the truth, even when your voice shakes. It means you stop making your emotional needs smaller to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. So when the hurt happens again, and they return with the casual tone, the smooth reset, the let's move on energy, your response becomes different. You don't explode. You don't beg. You don't perform pain to prove it exists. You calmly state your reality. You say, I'm not okay skipping repair. I'm not okay pretending this didn't affect me. I want connection, and I also want emotional safety. And then you watch what they do next. Because effort is a language. If they care in a way that is mature, they won't punish you for needing repair. They may feel uncomfortable, but they will try. They will listen. They will reflect. They will take responsibility in actions, not just words. They will show you that your feelings matter to them, not only when you are easy to love, but when you are honest about being hurt. And if they respond with dismissal, irritation, avoidance, or guilt tripping, that is information too. It doesn't mean they are evil. It means their emotional capacity may not match the level of safety you require. And that is the moment you remember that your role is not to rescue someone from the consequences of their pattern. Your role is to protect your heart. You do not have to hate them to choose yourself. You do not have to erase the good to acknowledge the harm. But you do have to stop confusing empathy with permission, because the more you let compassion override your boundaries, the more you teach your heart to live in a relationship where you are emotionally alone. You deserve a love where your kindness is met with care, where your softness is met with responsibility, where your empathy is respected, not exploited, where your feelings are treated as important, not inconvenient, where a rupture leads to repair, not a casual reset. So keep your compassion. It is one of your greatest strengths. But anchor it to standards. Let it be guided by self-respect. Let it be paired with the quiet courage to say, I will not keep normalizing harm just because I understand where it comes from. The way you respond after the hurt determines whether this cycle ends or becomes your identity. And that is the part nobody really prepares you for. Because when you're standing in the aftermath of being hurt and then ignored, minimized, or casually reset by an avoidant, you are not just dealing with what they did. You are standing at a crossroads inside yourself. Every reaction you choose in that moment quietly teaches your nervous system what to expect from love. And if you're not careful, you don't just experience a painful pattern. You start becoming the person who lives around it, bends around it, and shapes your whole sense of self around surviving it. When they act like nothing happened, your first impulse might be to grab onto any sign of warmth, to grab the normal again. Even if your heart is still bleeding, because that temporary calm feels easier than confronting the truth. But every time you take that route, you are telling yourself that your peace is negotiable, your boundaries are flexible, and your feelings are disposable as long as the connection doesn't break. That is how a cycle becomes your identity, not through one big decision, but through 100 small moments where you choose their comfort over your own truth. The alternative is harder at first, but it is where your power lies. It is the choice to respond differently this time, to honor the part of you that is hurting instead of rushing her to be low maintenance. Again, it is the choice to slow down, to stop automatically replying like nothing happened, to stop rewarding avoidance with instant access, and to ask yourself one simple question before you answer them. If I respond this way, am I protecting my heart or abandoning it? Your response after the hurt is not just what you say to them. It is what you say to yourself when you tell them, it's fine, don't worry about it. When it's not fine, you are telling yourself that your pain is an inconvenience. When you let them walk back in without any conversation because you're scared to lose them, you are telling yourself that you are easier to lose than they are. When you push aside your own need for repair to keep them comfortable, you are teaching your body that love means self-erasure. And once your body believes that, it will start repeating it everywhere. You always have more power than you think in that moment after the hurt. You may not be able to control whether they shut down, whether they disappear, whether they dismiss, but you can control whether you participate in pretending it never happened. You can control whether you answer immediately or give yourself time to think. You can control whether you speak your truth calmly or swallow it again and carry it like a secret bruise. You can control whether you say, I'm glad you reached out, but I'm not okay skipping what happened. Or whether you slide right back into surface level conversation and hope your heart forgets. I'm not telling you this to shame you. I am telling you this because the moment after the hurt is where your future self is built. When you hold your boundary, even shakily, your future self learns that you will not leave her alone with pain. When you ask for accountability, your future self learns that her feelings are allowed to take up space. When you choose distance instead of immediate reassurance from the person who hurt you, your future self learns that safety matters more than fantasy. And that is how the cycle begins to lose its power over you. The truth is, your response after the hurt reveals what you believe you deserve. If you believe you deserve crumbs, you will keep accepting the reset. If you believe you deserve emotional safety, you will stop trading your dignity to maintain a fragile connection. You might still love them. You might still want it to work. You might still see all their potential. But you will no longer negotiate your worth down to fit inside their limitations. That shift doesn't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes it looks like taking a day to respond instead of replying instantly. Sometimes it looks like answering their "hey" with "we can talk, but I need us to address what happened." Sometimes it looks like deciding that if they can't handle that level of honesty, then you can't handle giving them that level of access anymore. The way you respond after the hurt is also how you teach them how to treat you. If every time they ignore your pain and you still show up the same way, they will naturally assume the pattern is working, not because they are evil, but because nothing is challenging it. When you start responding differently, you interrupt the pattern. You create friction. Where there used to be a smooth slide back into comfort. And friction is what forces people to either grow or reveal that they won't. You might be scared that you will lose them if you hold that line, but I want you to ask yourself honestly, what are you losing by not holding it? You're losing sleep, self-trust, energy, time. You're losing the version of you who once believed that love could be soft and safe instead of confusing and conditional. Your reaction after the hurt is your vote. Every time you are voting for the kind of life you will live, you are voting for the kind of love you will tolerate. You are voting for the kind of relationship you're willing to have with yourself. Are you going to be the person who keeps abandoning their own heart to keep the door open for someone who walks in and out freely? Or are you going to be the person who finally says, if you want access to me, you have to be safe from me, not perfect, not flawless, but willing to repair, willing to listen, willing to show up when it's uncomfortable. Because if they're not willing, then your job is not to keep auditioning. Your job is to walk yourself out of a story that keeps teaching you you're too much for wanting normal human care. In the end, what defines you is not that you were hurt by an avoidant who acted like nothing happened. What defines you is what you decided to do with that pain. Did you let it train you to accept less and less? Did you let it convince you that asking for repair is weakness? Or did you let it wake you up? Did you let it teach you that your heart is worth protecting? Did you let it push you into a new standard where love must include responsibility, or it does not get to call itself love in your life anymore? The most dangerous trap in an avoidant dynamic is not the argument, not the silent treatment, not even the moment you realize they hurt you, and then walk away like your heart is a minor inconvenience. The most dangerous trap is what happens next, the seductive pull of normal again, without accountability, because that reset can feel like relief. It can feel like oxygen after emotional suffocation. It can feel like the relationship is back, the warmth is back, the hope is back. And when you love someone, relief is tempting. Relief can feel like proof that everything is going to be okay, even when nothing has actually been repaired. That is where the pattern locks in. When someone hurts you and then returns with a light tone, a casual message, a friendly joke, and you act like it's all okay, you are not just avoiding conflict. You are training the relationship. You are teaching your nervous system to swallow pain for the sake of peace. And you are teaching them that your boundary is flexible, negotiable, and ultimately optional if they wait long enough. I want you to really sit with that, because it's not just about what they learn. It's also about what you learn. Every time you ignore the rupture to keep the connection alive, you quietly tell yourself that your needs can be postponed, that your feelings can be wrapped up and stored somewhere dark, that your dignity is less important than the comfort of not rocking the boat. Over time, that self-betrayal becomes a habit so subtle you don't even notice you're doing it, until you feel exhausted, resentful, and emotionally drained. The reset without repair is especially powerful in avoidant patterns because it plays on your empathy. You start thinking maybe they're trying in their own way. Maybe they don't know how to talk about feelings. Maybe if I just let this go, we can move forward. But moving forward without repair is not progress. It's avoidance with a fresh coat of calm on top. Repair is where the relationship either grows or reveals its ceiling. Repair is not a dramatic interrogation. It's not you attacking them with a list of everything they've ever done wrong. It's you naming impact. It's you asking for basic emotional responsibility. It's you saying, I want us to be okay, but I'm not okay pretending this didn't hurt. That is not too much. That is the minimum requirement for trust. When an avoidant processes love through distance, they can also process conflict through disappearance. The reset becomes their shortcut. They want the benefits of closeness without the discomfort of reflection. And the uncomfortable truth is that if you accept the shortcut again and again, you become part of the system that preserves it. This is why your standards matter most after the hurt, not when everything is romantic, not when the chemistry is high, not when they are being sweet and attentive. Standards are tested when the relationship is inconvenient, when emotions are messy, when accountability feels vulnerable. That's the moment your boundaries become real. And boundaries without follow-through become invitations for repetition. If you say, I need us to talk about this, and then you drop it the second they act warm again, you unintentionally teach them that avoiding discomfort works. If you say, I can't do this pattern anymore, but you reward the first crumb of affection with immediate access, you unintentionally teach them that your pain has a short expiration date. I know why this is hard. You don't want to fight. You don't want to lose them. You don't want to be labeled as the emotional one, the difficult one, the one who can't let things go. You want love, not war. You want peace, not drama. But you can't create real peace by silencing your truth. It doesn't build security. It builds emotional debt, and emotional debt always comes due. The deeper problem with normal again, without accountability, is that it fractures your self-trust. You start doubting your instincts. You start minimizing your own experience. You start telling yourself that your heart should be tougher, quieter, easier to manage. And that is how a relationship becomes a place where you survive instead of thrive. Healthy resistance to this trap looks like slowing down the reset. It looks like refusing the emotional shortcut. It looks like kindness with clarity. You can say, I'm glad we're talking, and I need us to address what happened before we pretend everything is fine. You can say, I want closeness, but not at the cost of pretending my feelings don't exist. You can say, I'm open to rebuilding, and I need to see accountability, not just affection. Because affection without accountability is not safety. It's a temporary mood. If they are capable of growth, this is where they will begin to show it. They may be uncomfortable, they may need time, but they will try to understand your experience. They will try to repair the rupture. They will care about how their behavior landed, not just how quickly the tension can disappear. That effort is the difference between someone who is learning and someone who is repeating. And if they shut you down, dismiss you, punish you for bringing it up, or make you feel guilty for needing repair, you have your answer about the emotional environment you are living in. You don't need to weaponize your boundaries. You need to honor them. You don't need to become cold. You need to become consistent. You don't need to demand perfection. You need to require basic respect for your emotional reality. Because the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop accepting a version of peace that is built on your silence. If your relationship only works when you pretend you weren't hurt, then the relationship isn't asking for love. It's asking for erasure. And you are not here to erase yourself to keep someone else comfortable.